Hey everyone, Dogen here. So I just want to clarify something really quick with regards to finances in Japan. I think this might be very important for a lot of Americans that are living in Japan that might end up taking my advice when I talked about starting doing your own work in Japan rather than going through the system, so to speak. So what I have right here is a guide by a company or some firm, Fun Financial Advisors, a guide to investing in financial planning for Americans living abroad. So a lot of the information that I learned about investing as an American living abroad, I picked up from this guide that you can download for free online. But one of the things that I recommended in my Working in Japan video was, again, rather than going through the system, so to speak, and working at a Japanese company and being like a translator there or being a programmer there, I recommended going freelance, doing something by yourself. And because of that, and also in the Finances in Japan video, I said that all money that you make up to about $100,000 in Japan won't be taxed by the IRS because it's taxed in Japan, and you have to get over that threshold in order to be taxed by the American government. So, however, there's something that I need to clarify real quick, and again, this is because I don't want any of you guys to get hit with tax issues later on, but sorry, I should have gotten to the right page earlier. Okay, so here we go. I'm just going to read this out because I think it'll be most obvious that way. Okay, so investors need to very carefully navigate the complex rules governing these accounts to avoid mistakes that might trigger unnecessary taxation or even the loss of tax-deferred status. Furthermore, optimizing the tax advantage of these accounts also requires careful calculation of how stock and bond investments are allocated between taxable and tax-deferred or tax-exempt accounts. For the self-employed, proper use of retirement savings accounts is particularly important because of the tax regime imposed by the U.S. Americans, because of the tax regime imposed by the U.S. on Americans with self-employment income derived from non-U.S. sources. Generally, Americans employed abroad by non-U.S. employers can escape the self-employment tax altogether. But any American living abroad with self-employment, Schedule C, income must pay the full 15.3% tax, unless exempt by a bilateral totalization agreement. So, my understanding is this means that if you start your own company in Japan, and I don't have a company in Japan, so I get my money from Google and I get my money from Patreon and like Yahoo, as I've mentioned earlier. So all of that money, it's not coming in from as income to an independent company that I've started in Japan. And also, I report my taxes to the U.S. government, the IRS, through a professional, certified professional tax accountant agency, the Greenbacks Tax company that I mentioned previously for Americans living abroad. I highly recommend that service. So I've personally never run into this issue, but the point that I want to clarify is that I do think that it's best to work independently rather than going through a company. I think that you'll be able to get ahead much more if you do that. However, if you work independently, and I'm not even going to specify any details because, again, it's different for every single circumstance, you may be subject to this 15.3% self-employment tax. So if you do end up starting a company in Japan, I actually understand that if you start a company in a foreign country, there's a bunch of whole other issues involved with that. So I can't recommend starting a company in Japan, and I can't. If you do independent work, make sure that you're reporting your taxes correctly, because independent workers may be subject to independent Americans living abroad that are, again, I'll read this bit out real quickly. But any American living abroad with self-employment income must pay the full 15.3% on income that's not derived from the U.S., that doesn't come from the U.S. So if you're an American living abroad, but you're working at a company, you don't have to worry about that. Any money up to $100,000, essentially. However, if you're not working at a company, then things are a little bit different. So again, in brief summary, I just want everyone to be aware that I do believe it's best to work independently in Japan. That's what I do. I go through Patreon, and I go through YouTube, I go through recently Twitch, and I go through Yahoo. However, if you are working independently, you may be subject to an additional self-employment tax. So again, if that's you, if that's your situation, make sure that you're reporting your taxes correctly, because you don't want anything to come back and bite you in the butt later, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. So again, a good place to go through to report your taxes is Greenback Tax Services. That's what I use. I've been using them every year for the past 3 years or so. So please accept my apologies for this kind of sudden video. I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew this because of the various pieces of advice that I've given in the past. So make sure that you're reporting your taxes correctly. Always consult a professional, tax professional when doing any kind of new work ventures. So I'll just leave things there. Thank you very much for the continued support, and I look forward to speaking with you all again soon.